Christophe Berthoux joined Synexus as their Chief Executive Officer in September 2010. During his time there, or since then rather, he's expanded and grown the business in 11 countries and across 4 different continents. It's pretty cool. Synexus itself, it's a researches therapeutic areas such as musculoskeletal, cardiovascular, obesity and diabetes, respiratory, vaccines, and CNS, and is the worldwide leading site group. And Christophe himself is a self-proclaimed typical French guy, loves his wine, and he also enjoys hiking in the Alps. So please welcome Christophe.
Thank you, thanks. Very flattered to be here. I just want to thank Clariness for giving me the opportunity to speak. Flattered to be representing the site. Obviously I'll be speaking a lot about Synexus because this is the thing that I know the best. So Michael said, don't be too salesy, Christophe. Just be factual about sites. I'm a member of the Society of Research Clinical Sites, which you probably all know, and I'll try to share with what we're doing at Synexus, but also try to extend this to other type of sites because there's many sites in the world with different model. But before doing so, I just want to thank all the patients for their testimonials. As a manager of a site business, sometimes I attend this type of dinner. We organize dinner. We call this retention dinner. It's a little bit, try to keep the patient engaged in a trial. And I try to attend and get testimonials, how we're doing in terms of performance, how we're treating the patient, how we're listening to the patient, which is very critical when you're a site. And it's always mind-blowing. I know, especially when you have unmet needs, probably very frustrating for you to be here, to be saying to the medical community, guys, when are you going to have a drug there? But, as a side business, we're here to recruit patients, retain patients in clinical trial. We're here to follow a protocol. And, we're not here to search for drug, but, sometimes when you directly exposed to patient, I can understand the frustration. And I'm sure, hopefully, someday, there will be something to help you cure some of your rare diseases. So if you go to the first slide, I think, I don't want to open a door which has been pretty open, which I think we've been talking a lot this morning about why do patients, do not participate in clinical trial. I think the first thing is awareness. You don't know that the trial will start. I think the overall industry, whether you're a site, whether you're a sponsor, whether you're a CRO, whether you're a patient recruitment organization, I think we all have a social responsibility to inform the patient that there is a trial ongoing. But it's frustrating because you only have access to clinical.gov. When a trial is starting, where it's recruiting, how many sites. But it's frustrating because you don't know where is the trial, has it ended, what's the result of a trial. So hopefully, I know there are a lot of initiatives to improve transparency from a sponsor perspective. I know the EMA, the European, is pushing a lot to be transparent, and I think this will help us to communicate better and to actually give the result of a particular trial to the patient, because this is, I think, we not only have to say thank you to you guys when you participate in trial, a big thank you, but we also have to tell you, what happened with the drug, as the drug being approved, and sometimes, sponsors are saying to us, you cannot share, if the patient is on a placebo and all this. So I think there's a lot of initiative to improve the transparency there. So the first thing is awareness. Second thing is obviously, the fear of the unknown, which we call the guinea pig factor, which is, I can say this because I'm a DVM, I've been working a lot in lab animals, so I understand the animal side, but I understand a lot now the human side. So I think it's the fear of the unknown, because the industry has not been very transparent, so you probably feel a little bit, what are they going to do to me? What type of drug I'm going to receive? Am I going to receive placebo or something else? So I think we need to work a lot, as an industry on this. There's also social and economic pressure at a patient perspective. Basically, you all have your day life. You have to work, and going in a clinical trial takes a lot of time. There's depending on the protocol, but. We've been running trials where, we had patients for 8 years, regular visit for 8 years. This is a lot of time. So I think, as an industry and as a site, I think we have also the responsibility to communicate back the sponsor, whether it's pharma or CRO, and to explain. We're pushing a lot for patient stipends because we think it's very important because they have to be at least compensated for the time they're spending on a clinical trial. But you always have to go through the approval of the ethics committee because we cannot incentivize you to go to a trial, but at least we should compensate you when you're losing your time and you have your day job and your daily activities. That it's very important for us to actually to raise your voice. I don't want to go to the CSCRIP 2006, but I think if you look at in the UK, I think 7 or 8% of the patients are participating in clinical trials, and this is, I think we all have a social and societal responsibility in all this in order to absolutely be the promote the trials, because not saying that it's going to cure your disease, but at least you're trying something for and you may be successful in curing a disease. Clariness asked me to talk about patient centricity, which is a big topic for site. One message for me is that patient centricity is how your entire business and how your site is totally organized. You cannot declare, oh, I'm going to try to be patient centric. I think it has to be within the value of your business, and this is where I'm going to be a little bit salesy, share what we've been doing at Synexus. Sorry, Michael, which I think we put patient engagement, which is one of our value in the business, which is we have 5 values that we all trust, which is professional values. So that if you work at Synexus, you have to trust these values, and we're testing when we recruit nurses, doctors, data coordinators, everybody in the company. We test these people, we recruit them against, on these values. And they don't like it, they don't join the company. So I just want to be sure this is the environment we're living in. And patient centricity, you'll see it, and patient engagement for us has been something that we put, up front. It's one of our top values in the business. And in the past, when I joined, we're talking about patient safety, which is, the responsibility we have to be sure that the patient is safe, especially when you're a doctor. You're the ultimate, last contact or the ultimate contact with the patient. So you have, of course, a patient safety responsibility, but it's important that you engage the patient, you listen to the patient, and you spend a lot of time with the patients. And I'll share what we're doing, what we try to do on a global basis. And believe me, when you run a business, when you have more than 190 sites, 11 countries. When you are in countries like South Africa, Poland, India, it's very different. The environment is very different. Recruiting a patient in South Africa is very different than recruiting a patient in Germany or in the US or in the UK. So you really have to understand, the local healthcare environment in order to, recruit, find these patients, and bring them in a clinical trial. So I think the key thing, it has to be, if you're a site, the patient centricity has to be, into the embedded in the fabric of your site. It's not something that you say, okay, we need to be patient centric. We need to recruit more patients. It's how basically you work. So even if you're a site that you're a doctor, you're doing clinical trial on a part-time basis, I really think you should view your patient in a different environment than you view your patient for medical care, because you're going to have to spend more time when you're viewing a patient in a clinical trial than you do on a typical medical care. And this is, for example, what we've been asking, and this is how Synexus was started 25 years ago in this country. Our founder was a GP, and he was doing like a lot of GP in this country. He was spending medical practice in the morning, doing clinical trial in the afternoon, and he said, well, if I dedicate my full time and some of my best nurse on clinical research, maybe I'll do a better job, and maybe I'll be able to bring more patients into a clinical trial. And this is still the paradigm that we are following, and that's what we're trying to do on a global basis. And it's not so easy, because you always have economic pressure, but this is important for us, that the doctor engage and spend a lot of time with each of their patients and listen, which sometimes when you are in medical practice, frankly, especially in countries like here or in Germany, you don't have time. You don't have time to listen to your patients. So, the clinical research environment is very different from, a medical care environment. Also important for a site to really invest in the community. I heard this, being patient-centric, start that you have to build a community around your site. And whether, the community has several, you have healthcare professionals. So I'll tell you how we do with doctors, because you doctors view us as, oh, you have a Synexus research site here. What do? Are you competing with us? So it's really important that we engage and we communicate with them. And I think it's a win-win for everybody at the end of the day. It's a win-win for the patient, for the doctors, because we're not competing with the medical practice. And it's a win for us because, we are putting the patient in a clinical trial. Listening to the patient, it's also at all levels. And Michael asked me, be sure that you address the feasibility aspect of things. This is something that we don't do enough, and I know, because we don't have time. So when we do feasibility, yes, we get input from investigators. Yes, we get input from the local investigators in the countries we're doing the trial. So we have pretty much, good insight for this, but we don't get enough, input from patients. And why? Because we're not getting paid for this, and because when we get a feasibility, we have 2 weeks to turn around this feasibility, and so already a lot of time to get feedback from investigators in 11 countries in 200 sites. So we don't have time to, we're not spending time on listening to the patient in a particular protocol. And frankly, I'm happy to be at the debate. I think it's also part of the sponsor responsibility to really engage when they build their protocol to really, what's in it for the patient. One thing that we're doing, I think, good in our company is that we always think about a particular protocol, what's in it for the patient. If you have a trial in type 2 diabetes and if you're well maintained, why would you come to a particular trial? So you have to find, this thing which makes the patient come to the trial. And that's not easy. There's always, different local answers, different answers by country. And this is what we're trying to gather. And, believe me, feasibility is an art. We don't have algorithm for feasibility. It's really an art. So you have to go to all your investigators, get your feedback, understand, how it's working in Germany, how it's working in South Africa, and it's a lot of work. So frankly, on the feasibility side, probably good for discussion, but I think it's important that the industry gets the patient input very early on, and I'm sure we will have what I call doable protocols. Because, the protocols are extremely complex. They're getting more and more complex. The industry is looking for more complex patients, more complex procedures, more data, and here you are, you're the site, you're running in every aspect of things. And, I think it's people who are elaborating this protocol have probably to really get what do they want and what's in it for the patient, and this is, very important. The other thing is the patient has to feel at a site level, this is very important. So I know you've been sharing some of your experience with big hospital. I think when you go to a big academic center, you know what you're going for. You're going because there is a key opinion leader, person who is, the master of the science or the expert in this science, and this is understandable. But, sometimes these people do not have time to listen to patients. It's not because they are the expert that they know how to recruit a patient in clinical trial. And we see this. It's because we have opened some sites, in NHS hospital. We opened 2 sites in the UK, and we see this. We see this, a lot of this happening. So, for us, it's really important that, we understand we build this relationship with the doctor, and believe me, the KOL not necessarily will be the best recruiter in a particular trial because they're not engaging with the patient. And at the end of the day, this is 2-person, 1-to-1, and you have to have confidence in your doctor if you want to go in a particular trial. So the experience at the site has to be important, it's all about the patient experience. So I'll show you a couple of pictures of what we're trying to do with sites. There is a I want patients, when they come to our site, they see that this is a Synexus site. They have the same feel about the site. So if you go to a site in South Africa, if you go to a site in Poland, if you go to a site in the US, inside in the UK, the same feel, even if the patient is different. This is very important. So there is a kind of, we're building a branding thing with the patient, because at the end of the day, for us, the patient is a customer. Yes, we're doing protocols for pharma, but if we win something when the patient gets in and wants to be in a particular trial, which is very important. Not all the sites have understood this. So this is what I was sharing on the patient centricity, which has to be around the values. So this is, for example, using Synexus as an example. This is our 5 key values, which is more related to professional values, but patient engagement is at the top of it. And we switch from patient safety, which is an important thing, is still there, to patient engagement, because we want doctors and nurses to be, all what they have to think is how they're going to listen to the patient and how they're going to randomize a particular patient in a trial. That's what we're trying to do, which is not easy. Important for us is also to build this community around the site. So if you look at just how we work, which is we have what we call dedicated research sites. So we don't do medical care in our site. We only do clinical research. It's like a big GP practice. You get 5 doctors, you have 7 nurses, you have data coordinator. We have what we call a patient service group, which is very important. And the patient service group is taking care of all the logistic of the patient, how to reach them, how to call them for a particular appointment, send them, the taxi, the transportation to go to a particular site, welcome them, when they arrive at reception, understand, talk to them about their day-to-day life. And this is a very important part of the site for us. But around these sites, we have doctors, doing medical care. So we have to engage with what I call these healthcare professionals. They have patients. They have more patients than us, because basically, they're doing medical care, and we only do clinical research. So it's really important that we tell them, oh, there is a particular trial coming here. They don't know about necessarily about a specific trial. And, especially if you talk to GP in this country, they don't have time to do clinical trials. So we go to see them. We have, what we call clinical relations specialists, and we build, relationship with these doctors, telling them we have clinical trials. We know there is a trial in this particular area. You have patient. We're not competing with you in medical care, but if you allow us to have access to your patient, we will give them a fee for what we call source data verification, which is the patient file. But we cannot incentivize a doctor to refer us a patient. And then they accept, because it's a win-win for everybody. The patient has a chance to participate in a clinical trial that he knows. The doctor doesn't lose his patient because he knows that, for example, a site will not be a competitor in medical care. And the patient, has the access to the particular trial. So it's a win-win. It takes a lot of time to do this. But, I think probably what we've done well at Synexus over time is probably understand this environment, and you have to do this in each of the country. Same thing in Germany, same thing in South Africa, in Poland, and you have to understand also the healthcare environment. So sometimes, in certain countries, the medical care is probably the standard of care is lower than in other countries, so you have to understand this as well. And I'll share with you what we do in terms of we're offering also free health check for the patient in order to continue, to build our database. So that's the first, engagement with the healthcare professional. And then, we do like Clariness. We use Clariness as well, in order to engage directly with patients, social media. We do some advertising. So we've done some advertising in the tube. I can tell you it works well. Not, the return on investment is probably could be improved. But we've tried a lot of things, and it's trial and error. And for us, it's very important when you have a recruitment plan. You're trying to, because the ultimate customer is the sponsor. They said, okay, we're going to engage a site, so you need to be credible enough, and you need to know exactly how you're going to recruit the patient in order to say to a sponsor, for example, for this particular trial, I'll be able to randomize, 200 patients per site, and you have to come with a recruitment plan and very upfront, otherwise, your credibility is very low. And I think we've understood this, and I'll come back to the feasibility, how we do this, but this is probably what we've been building over time, understanding how to respond to a particular request. So, and then, we engage patient, and then over time, what we've been doing as well is we have been building our patient database. So when patient come to a site, you have exclusion criteria on a particular protocol, and the patients have come, you've done some blood sampling, maybe, they're not eligible for a particular trial, but, we ask them the possibility to stay on our database, and we know this patient want to participate in a clinical trial in the future. So what do? When there is a trial, we contact them directly, and then we've been building, our database over time. And if you look at, for example, sourcing of our patient, varies from country, but roughly is 30 to 40% of our patients will come through our relationship with healthcare professionals. 30 to 40% will come from our own database. And I would say now lower, but direct marketing campaign is probably social media and all this, probably 10 to 20%. So this is how we, I think, we've been talking about this. So building this Synexus patient community is something that, we could do more, because, there's now overall globally, we have a patient database on the north of, 4 million patients. But all these patients have roughly the same conditions, because our model, for example, is very good for primary care, but we're not very good on the oncology side. So you have to understand also which type of disease you can do, what type of patient you can bring in a particular trial, and this is very important for a site. CROs, pharma, they have all their what they call the database of site. They have a performance index on all the site. So I think probably at a site level, you really have to understand where you're good at and where you're not going to be good at. And you have to be pretty upfront with the sponsor, with the patient as well. You say, okay, this is new for us, we'll try. Maybe we'll find patient, but it is, I think it's critical to be very transparent upfront with any sponsor. Things that we've been doing as well, which is, and I know a lot of sites are doing this, health checks. And this is probably very important in countries where the standard of care will be lower than in the US and the UK. So, when we do free health check for the population, sometimes we will diagnose a type 2 diabetes patient, colitis patient, for example. And this is great, because then you're bringing awareness, and I think it's important for us. We have a societal responsibility here, and I think it's good to be able to offer patient this type of service. And obviously, this is how we do it in respective countries. We have, for example, we are also organizing, the World Tuberculosis Day in South Africa. We have a site in South Africa which is in the middle of township. You see patients which are tuberculosis positive, HIV positive. It's mind blowing. Young women, 25 years old with their kids, they all have tuberculosis and HIV. So, you really have to understand how a township is working, and in terms of belief, how they treat patient, and it is very different than recruiting a patient in London or in Berlin. Believe me. So I think it's important that the local thing, and this is probably what Clariness has been understanding, probably like us, very, very early on, that this international experience is very unique, and it helps you, to do a better job in certain countries, because every country is different in terms of, recruiting patient and bringing patient in a particular clinical trial. I've been speaking about this, which is this. I call this maybe it's not. It's brand development. I'm sorry, I'm a marketer by training. So I think it's. I want every patient when they come to a Synexus clinic to know that they are coming to a Synexus clinic, even if a clinic is based in a hospital, because it's all about this patient experience, and I want the patient to remember it. And this is for us, an important way to differentiate what we're doing at a site level. And I think if you're a site if you're a site with an academic site, I really think they should learn from this. And we've been building some relationship with the NHS here in the UK. And I just opened another site a couple of weeks ago in the north of the UK, and the NIHR was there. Jonathan Sheffield was leading this important initiative in the UK. And I said to Jonathan, this is the best of both worlds. NHS, you have the science, you have all the complex patients, you have the doctors who can work on these complex procedures, you know how to run these complex protocols. We can help you to operationalize all this and make the patient experience unique when they come to one of your hospitals. And this is what we've been trying to do, which is still to be proven, but it's our second site. And I foresee that in the future, a company like us can help the NHS to be more patient-friendly, because I think we've been learning from what we've been experiencing in small community hospital or dedicated site. And it's listening to the patient throughout the journey, not only for the informed consent, but also when they come on a regular visit, when they come for free health check. This is very important, and it is at all level of the site, not only the doctor, but also the nurse, but also what I call the patient service person, which is really the receptionist. So you have always to listen to the patient, because the patient will share different things with different people, because sometimes you may be impressed by the doctor, you want to talk to the doctor, and you probably have building relationship with a nurse. So I think it's really important that the site is allowing this type of relationship to and listen to the patient. So this is type of thing that we're doing which is called patient retention, and the same thing. Patient retention is like patient centricity. You have to think about retention when you're building the protocol, very upfront. And you have, and for us, it's a lot of lessons learned, because one of the problem with our model is that, probably unlike I would say a regular site where you have medical care and they use the practice database of patient, it's easy for them to retain the patient, because the patient will come back for having regular treatment. For us, we really have to do an outstanding job and really have to spend time on retaining, and this is where we organize this dinner. That's a dinner I've been saying that sometimes I attend, where we invite patients and they share each other their experience of on a particular trial, but they talk also about the diseases. They invite their significant others. So this is something that we will keep doing moving forward. Patient-centric feasibility. I don't think we do enough of it. I think we get it through the filter of the investigator. So I think we get a very good picture on what's happening in a particular with HCP, in Germany or in a particular country. I think we have this feedback. It takes a lot of time and effort to get this feedback, but I think we will improve very much our feasibility if we were engaging patients very early on and actually get discussion on a particular protocol. When we do feasibility, as I was saying, this is we have this feedback from the different doctors, which is working for us or have a relationship with us. We build what we call a recruitment plan, so we know where we're going to find the patient. We build a retention plan, and we know this very upfront. And then each time we do a feasibility, we'll also take our past experience in this particular therapeutic area, which is where we could have some algorithm and all this. I think it's good because it's a checkup of oh, this is what we're saying, but how have we done in a similar trial in the same therapy area? Have we been doing, what we've been saying? And I think it's important for us, and it's very important for sites to always compare, what they're doing on the feasibility and compare this with their past experience. So this is something that, we spend a lot of time, but I think one thing which is missing in our feasibility is this upfront patient input on a particular protocol. So sometimes, we will do some spot check. I mean, very qualitative check with certain patients. So this will be done at the country level. So, for example, remember we were testing a drug which was supposed to replace the statin. There's been a lot of trials recently on this, and it was really important to find what type of statin was used in a particular country, what dosage. And this is important because it gives you some insight of the number of patients you're going to be able to really put in a clinical trial. So, I've been talking about this, which is, the listening piece of it. So what's next? I really think maybe new sources of data in order to improve our feasibility, but the patient input in a protocol at the feasibility level, I think will be a big improvement for any site in the world. So I'm keen to get what Clariness is doing into this, but I think, probably the big debate of who's going to pay for this, and I think it should be the sponsor responsibility. If they build a protocol, they need to know, what's in it for the patient, and I think this will really improve the quality of studies and the randomization we're doing on a particular trial. So, I really think that this patient-centric culture, yes, the site have a strong responsibility into this. As I was saying, we have to build this patient-centric culture. I think this is our social responsibility. It's even our societal responsibility. I think this is probably why, we've been successful in terms of site versus other sites. When I talk to the site, sometimes I'm absolutely amazed by the lack of patient centricity that certain sites may have. And there's simple thing, and I think it was mentioned this afternoon, opening hours. So we are opening our clinic on a Saturday and a Sunday, just to allow patients to be able to come and to participate in a clinical trial, because these people, have a working life. So it's important that we are opening the clinic of hours, which is critical. And then we talk about the listening and the education. I think for the patient itself, there is also, thanks for your testimonial, but we have to provide an ongoing education. I think the industry has to be able to share what we're doing in the different therapeutic area indication. I don't know if the advocacy group are really the way to do it. I think it's complex, especially when you talk to, Diabetes UK. This is a big association. Maybe it's too big, so maybe there's ways to do things differently. There's social interaction. So what you're doing here, it's a small thing, but it's very important. This is what you're experiencing today, and our experience with you, I think it's very unique. So we should always take this to our mind. And I think for us at a site level, and I think a lot of sites probably do not get this still, but a lot of them are getting it, which is to really engage with every healthcare professionals. This is not, yes, we're a small fraction of things, but it's really important that we have people, visiting all the different medical practices and explain what's going on in clinical trial, because they don't know. These people, the doctors also, have a lot of things in terms of education. They want to keep their license. They have to go into training and all this. They don't have time to listen about all this. So I think we have, I think the site could be the link to this. And we have also to, establish relationship management with every healthcare providers. So I know, for example, in the US, now it's, engaging with this affordable care organization, which is, clinical trial is a care option. It's also an option for care. So I think it's really important that, and this is very unique in the US. It doesn't really happen in the other countries, but you really have to understand, who's got the power in this healthcare chain, and it varies from one country to another. And I think this is why for us at a site level, it's really important to understand, this economic environment, but also how it's working, very simple thing, how clinical research is working in the respective country. So I want to thank you for giving me the time to talk to you. I'm open to questions.
You said you have more time than a normal practitioner would have for a patient. What does that mean? I mean, you can just factor in just more time because you get paid better, or what is the reason why you can do that?
It's part of our. So we ask, for example, every doctor to see a patient at least when they see a patient, it's for 30 minutes. So we have some fixed thing like this, which is. I think it's important to have very important rules in a business like this, because that means you're serious about things. So even if you run a business, and we are a for-profit organization, I'm not hiding anything here. So we're also here to make money, but it's important that the doctors have their time with the patient and they spend time. And believe me, some doctors do not like it. So what they do is that they leave our business and then they go to do something else. But for us, if they're coming to work with us, they will have at least to spend this 30 minutes on this, on the most important visit in a clinical trial, which is, and this is, so when you're CEO, you're saying this, you put some economic pressure in the business, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, what do you want is a patient which is engaged, and this is where, what matters. This is where, we're going to get paid, because, at the site level, if you don't put a patient on a trial, nothing. It's totally at risk, which is different than if you're a CRO, and because the CRO, you're monitoring sites, but, if you're a site, if you don't have a patient, it's a big loss for the business. So for us, it's really key. You have to understand where are the bottlenecks, and the bottlenecks are, most of the time on your doctor's time. And you also have to understand how it's done in a particular country. So for example, in the US, doctors are, they have very limited time, and we want to extend this, because we are integrating a business now, and this is something that, I'm going to spend time. I'm not going to compromise on this. Because even if it's put some economic pressure in the business, because I think long-term, this is how we're going to win.
Hi, Christophe, and thank you for a very nice presentation. I have very good experience with professional sites, as with the Synexus sites. But, if I use the word but, if I take on the hat of one of my medics in my team, she would ask you, so if you on one hand have a very patient-friendly, patient-centric approach with treating the patients in the most friendly way, but you put placebo effect in the other hand. Do you have some thoughts about that, one versus the others?
I know, we had some, the placebo thing is I think, it's not a site level we have to explain, but, there's things that you cannot disclose to a particular patient. So sometimes, we have patients saying, can you tell us what I got? And, sometimes it's by the way, it's hidden, so you don't even know. So I think it's I don't know if it's your question.
No, not really. I'm just thinking if you're treating the patient in a much friendlier way, in a much more positive way than the other sites are, then you could theoretically think that your placebo effect in your sites would be higher than in other sites.
I don't think we have expressed. I don't have any data on this.
Maybe some.
I don't have any data on this.
Words about that, because I can just, from my experience as an investigator clinician in the clinic where I work with asthma and COPD patients, we did as well. I mean, we also cared for the patient it was also kind of a business model in our hospital, right? But it could happen not only, I think, with the professional side, so it was all different. You cannot control it, I think, because we took care a lot about the patient. They even came into our clinic if they don't have an appointment. They just want to talk to us. They came in and want to give the diary and just talk to somebody, right? So because we treat them well, they came in and come to us. This discussion is hard to say. Should I treat the patient maybe different to avoid the placebo effect, right? But I think that's not the point of professional sites, because I also know different examples where I was at one site and the patient came in and the receptionist behind that just even don't watch at the patient, just sign in this form here, like this, and it was professional side, right? So I think it's not an issue of professional sites, and it's hard to control it.
Hi, I just wanted to share that in the last month I received a letter from my GP inviting me to take part in a trial for the first time.
It's good.
And it was because in the letter it says, because you are taking this particular drug, we are inviting you for this. And when you were talking about law awareness, I thought, well, my GP sent me this letter, and in my personal experience, because I have been taking this drug only for a short period of time, I was thinking, I don't know if I want to do this, because it would mean trying something else. And you spoke about the fear of the unknown. And now, listening to you, I was feeling, like I can go to my GP and say, well, I have a conversation with her.
Definitely.
So, I just wanted to share that.
I would definitely encourage this,
Yeah, thank you.
Just coming back to the discussion of placebo, I don't think this is something related to professional sites. I think it's something related to clinical trials, because all of a sudden you have a much stricter control of the patient, right? So I think that's why we have run-ins, right? So we stabilize the patient, and make sure that we reduce any influence on that, right? So there's also studies, certain countries where we may have lower access to care. Once you bring a patient into a study, then all of a sudden you're questioning, well, is it just working because of the drug, or because all of a sudden they receive the treatment they should receive on regular practice? So I don't think it's an easy question to resolve, right?
No.
But that's also why maybe also relates to why studies are more complex, because we're trying to reduce the bias of all of these factors, and then we bring in run-in periods, like pre-screening periods, so we try to stabilize the patient before they start receiving the drug, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't know.
You were talking about feasibility before, and that you go back to your local principal investigators actually, and they come back with that. What is actually the basis? Is it just the standard of care, the local standard of care that they provide you back, or what is it you get from that? Just to understand the quality of the data that you get. And I was very much with you when you said, if you just have 2 weeks time, and you're not even getting paid for it, it's obviously you have a 30% chance of winning. Your profit organization, you obviously have to deal with those kind of things. So I understand that you can't really do that as thorough as you would like to, but just what are you doing in terms of data that you're getting?
So it's basically the standard of care in a particular country. We also have started to have, I would say, physicians more specialized in certain therapy areas, which is, they've been running, some physician will be very good at running type 2 diabetes trial. So basically, when we have at the feasibility level, one therapy area, we try to engage, at least in all the respective country that we're going to bring a site, people with this past experience as well. So it's not only the standard of care, but it's also this therapeutic area experience in the past, which is helping us a lot. So then there is we do everything centrally. So we get central feasibility here, in the UK. So we gather everything. And then we see a lot of differences from one country to the other. So one country would say, I'm going to put 20 patients per site per month on this particular study. And the other one say, I'm going to put 50 patients per month. And this is where we're questioning. So central feasibility is really arguing, questioning, and getting into the detail. Why? What's happening? And they come with reason. And then we feed that back to the sponsor, just to say, okay, this is where... And sponsors may say, I'm dropping this country because basically, your feasibility tells us that, obviously the sponsor will check with other sites because we only a small portion of all the patients. So they'll check if they have the same tendency, trend in the other sites per country.
We have been trying to work with referral networks and stuff like that within my company, but many GPs or many doctors say that they are afraid of losing their patients because they, if they send them to you and then it will be a long study, then they lose control of that patients and they lose them. Do you have any how are you keeping that engagement with the patient's treating physician? Do you have a smart way? Are you inviting that treating physician to some of the, how do you do that?
So we do this. We engaging at a local level. Some of the HCP will visit our site. So it's a responsibility. They're engaging with our doctors, they're engaging with the site manager. So that's first, contact. Second thing is that when they allow us to access to the patient, we have an agreement with the practice so that they know anything is happening with the patient. So there is, feedback or a problem on a particular patient, so the practice will know, the patient will know as well. So it's a kind of tripartite agreement between the HCP, the patient, and us.
Thank you.
Takes a lot of admin work, basically, but it's worth it.